Everyone, thank you for coming today. So today we have our monthly BlockChain Center meetup event. So we have a couple of interesting speakers for you today. We're going to focus particularly on the Cardano ecosystem. So after Hassan talks us a little bit about Pluto smart contracts and the what's going on this summer with the Cardano ecosystem, Zap CTO Eric Manganero is going to do a development workshop, particularly focusing on Haskell programming. So he's going to give everyone just a high-level view of what's going on with Haskell and Pluto smart contracts, and also he can talk to you about what we're doing at Zap Protocol, including the Oracle testnet we just launched, and some of the things we have going with NFTs and DEXs and stuff. So everyone, once again, thank you for coming today. And without further ado, Hassan Michael, he's the South Florida Cardano ambassador. He's going to talk to us today a bit about what's going on in the ecosystem. So please take the mic.
Thank you. 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 Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me? No. I got one over here. Can you hear me? Yeah, I always have a problem with the microphone. So I remember at the last conference, I started over here, and halfway through, the mic was over here, and Charles was like. So I try to speak into the mic today. Welcome, and my name is Hassan Michael. There go my information. I'm the Cardano South Florida meetup organizer. I've been in the space since 2017. I'm also evangelist for Cardano, and I do investing, trading, and a little bit of analyst. I'm also a blockchain entrepreneur. I live in South Florida. Originally, I'm from Liberia, West Africa. And if you need to reach me, my information is right there, telegram.360 _ Mike. And Twitter.360 _ Mike. So tonight we're going to be talking about Plutos. And so what's the agenda for tonight? First of all, how many of you are actually familiar with Cardano? Okay, about 50%. And how many of you are actually developers, software developers? Okay, we're down to maybe 15%. So no problem. I had everybody in mind tonight as to what we're going to talk about. We're not going to get too technical, and at least if you have an idea, you'll be able to get some of this information to where you can fully comprehend it. So tonight we're going to be looking at the scope of the presentation. We're going to be talking about the goal of Plutos, and we're going to be also trying to understand what is Plutos and have a conceptual overview, as well as Pluto's playground documentation and the Pioneer program. First of all, how many of you know what Plutos is? Okay. I'm just trying to get a lay of the land so that along the way, if I need to adopt and change things around, I can do that on the fly. So what's the scope of the presentation tonight? We're going to be looking at, as I said earlier, a high-level overview. So we're not going to be I'm not going to be presenting you with any code, so you don't have to worry about that, because I know some people, as soon as you see software code, you freak out. It's not going to be a detailed dive. We're going to try to identify some of the unique advantages of Plutos. So once you understand what Plutos is, at least you try to see what are the advantages. So for you who are traders, you can go in the market and say, okay, I know what makes this language, smart contract language, unique and advantageous over Solidity. So you can make that decision even though you're not a developer. And then if you're a project manager, you can say, okay, how does Plutos benefits me from a project manager perspective to maybe allow my developers to move faster. And then at the same time, if you're a software developer, you'll be able to make an informed decision also. And I'll also try to provide you with learning material if you need to if you got stimulated tonight and you want to go ahead and have continuous learning on Plutos, you know at least where to go. So tonight we'll introduce Plutos to non-programmers, newcomers, and project managers, as well as software developers. and we'll identify specific and unique competitive advantages, and we'll also provide you with a path of what it takes to become a Plutus developer if you are interested. And like I said, I'm trying to stimulate your interest in Plutus, whether you're a developer, you're a project manager, or you're just straight up trader. You want to make money and you're trying to find some informational edge. So with that, let's get straight into our discussion for tonight. Smart contracts. So if you've been around the crypto space, you know that one of the driving force of just about every single altcoin, and when I say altcoin, I'm talking about from Ethereum down, basically. The driving force there is smart contracts. And a lot of times, not a whole lot of people pay attention to what smart contract is. And if you're trying to understand what Plutus Cardano smart contract is, a good start is just trying to comprehend what is a smart contract, what does it do? And a blockchain software smart contract is a blockchain program, which is a script that is a replacement for a third-party binding contract that ensures the following. One, you have to have an exchange of asset. So the common example is Alice and Bob. Bob transferred $50 to Alice and all of that. So you have to have an exchange of asset. In some cases, it may not be coin. In some cases, it might be NFT. In some other cases, it might be some other blockchain artifact. So you have to have an exchange of asset. The agreement, which is the contract binding that, have to be immutable, meaning that somebody can come later on and unilaterally decide to change that contract on you, right? And it has to be immutable. It also has to be transparent. You need transparency when you're executing these contracts. Why? Because to be trusted, everybody got to see what's happening. So it has to have transparency. It also have to be autonomous, meaning that it runs on its own. It's not waiting for somebody to execute parts of that contract. Everything that needs to be built into that contract has already been built in once it's on the blockchain, and it can run without any human interaction. And lastly, it has to be trusted, meaning that first of all, before I say what it means, is you have to understand the existence of blockchain is because we don't trust one another. That's one of the underlying tenets of blockchain. It operates in a trustless system. So when you hear trustless, it means that the parties that are participating, the underlying assumption is we don't trust you. So we have this system we can trust, a trusted third party. So once again, for smart contract, just to understand, there have to be an exchange of asset, immutability of the contract, transparency, everybody can see that. It's autonomous, meaning it can operate on its own, and it has to be a non-biased, trusted third party. So now you know what a smart contract is. What is Plutus? Plutus, in short, is just Cardano's way of doing smart contract. So if you look at Ethereum have their smart contract language called Solidity, which to do all the smart contract work. So Plutus is basically Cardano general purpose smart contract development framework for writing, testing, and deploying smart contracts to the Cardano blockchain. And Plutus is also a platform. Platform meaning that it contains all the necessary tools that you need to basically test, deploy, and execute execute smart contracts on the Cardano blockchain. So, moving on, what are some of the components of a smart contract for Plutus? On a high level, you have a wallet. And the wallet basically is what all of you guys might have. So for example, some people got Trezor wallet, some people have Trust wallet, some people have, if you will, Solana, a project called Soulflare. For Cardano, one of the main wallet, desktop wallet is Daedalus. You also have Yoroi. So you have a wallet API, which is basically whatever you have there, whether it's hardware or it's software, you're going to have APIs that interact there because that's where your asset is. The asset that needs to be exchanged is in your wallet. So Plutus has the APIs for that. And for those of you who are not programmers, API is simply an application programming interface or whatever you want to call it, a way of connecting and communicating. And then Plutus also have what you call your Plutus transaction. And this is where it gets a little technical. And we'll talk about that a little later. You also have the emulator for developers. That's where you can have BlockChain. So if you need to test your application, you don't have to go all the way to the full Cardano blockchain. And that's why I give developers the ability right now to test out Plutus on the BlockChain, even though the software hasn't been released to the Cardano blockchain yet. And then you have the Plutus intermediary language, which compile other languages to Plutus core. There's Plutus core, Plutus playground, and of course you have documentation. So these are some of the components that you have for Plutus. So what are some of the unique advantages for Cardano, Plutus? So it's a smart contract language, as we said first. It's a language that is unique to Cardano, but then what makes it stand out from a language like Solidity when it comes to writing smart contract? And you hear me keep going to Solidity because Solidity is the largest programming smart contract language right now. So most of your NFTs are written in Solidity. Most of your DeFi, which is decentralized finance, those protocols are written in Solidity. So I'll keep going there because that's the standard, that's the benchmark, that's the first to market, movers for smart contract. So the first thing you see there is Plutus is a high assurance language. And that's something that if you leave from here and you leave with one thing, that's what I want you to leave with. So when I say high assurance, what does that mean? That basically means when you have in software development, there are languages which are developed to develop different types of applications, whether it's Microsoft Word or it's a website. And those languages don't really care if you make too many mistakes in them. So basically, if you create a website or if you create a Microsoft Word and it crashes and you lose your Word document, yeah, you might be pissed off, but guess what? If it's really important to you, you're going to rewrite it, right? But if you are dealing with a high assurance software and it fails, it could be your life. For example, the software that a jet plane will be flying on. If it's not high assurance software and something happened to that, we're talking about death. Or if you were working on an X-ray machine and the software that's supposed to emit the amount of X-ray that come out of that machine, if it malfunctions, you're getting a whole lot more radioactive mercury, whatever they use, coming through you. So high assurance software is a piece of software basically that you can, in the case of Cardano, that you can mathematically prove to be correct. So that's the kind of software where basically you can throw a mathematical proof behind it and say, okay, we know everything we do, what we put in, we know exactly what we're going to get out. And it's tested rigorously. So that's the first thing you got to know. Compared to Solidity, Solidity is not operating on the same level. And I will tell you why and how Plutus program can be a high assurance software compared to other software, smart contract software. One of the reasons is because it's based on Haskell. And I think you'll hear the next speaker talk about Haskell. Haskell is a language that is based on lambda calculus. And for those of you who are not software developer or mathematician, basically lambda calculus is a way of proving that something is correct. So think of it as a function. You have your input, and then you have whatever your output is. 2 times 1 will always equals 2. So whenever you put in 2 and you have a 1, you expect 2 out. That's just how it works. So Haskell is one of those languages. So just that language alone, what it does is that it eliminates ambiguity. So when I say, for example, John, is a human, it communicates something to you. John is a human, but you won't be able to tell whether John is a boy or John is a girl. You might infer from the name, that John is a boy. But if I were to tell you a name that you didn't know, and I said John is a human, you won't know that. So Haskell, the language itself, tried to eliminate that kind of ambiguity from the actual code. So that's what gave Plutus one of the edge in being a high assurance language. Like I said earlier, it can be verified for correctness. So the languages, the applications, smart contract that you write will actually be able to be proven as correct. It's a secure language. We'll go into that a little later when we look at some of the functions. But one of the things that makes it secure is the fact that with Plutus, with Haskell again, your functions are what they call deterministic. So everything you do is contained in one simple function, and what you put in, you know exactly where you're coming out. But nothing outside that function can actually manipulate what is inside of that code set. And another reason you want to know about Plutus is you have predictable transaction fees. So for you who are traders or you who are writing code, if you look at Ethereum, you have a problem with that. You can submit a transaction and you don't know how much you're going to be charged until the transaction is actually submitted on chain. The problem with that is if the transaction fails, you still get charged. But with Plutus, you don't. Because in your wallet, you will have the ability of knowing how much your transaction fee is. So when you get to the chain, the blockchain, and it doesn't execute, you don't get charged for that. So that's one of the beauty of that. Fast execution, Plutus, it's on the proof of stake network. And also the development language, you have one development language for both on-chain and off-chain code. And it's also a composite development. For developers, what that means is basically, if you have a big project, you can have 10 developers working on the same project at different times. And neither one of them need to care about what the other person's working on. From a project manager perspective, that is huge because you don't have a bottleneck where Team A is holding up Team B. Because why? Team A just needs to consume the output as an input from Team B. So they know what the output going to be, what the input going to be on their end. So they can simulate that and keep on working on their project. So those are some of the competitive advantages. So let's get into the actual Plutus smart contract. I gotta keep track of time here, so excuse me a little bit. Okay. So into the actual Plutus smart contract, and this is pivoted more towards developer. You're gonna have two major pieces. You have your on-chain code and you have your off-chain code. And your on-chain code usually is the code that runs in, like I said earlier, in your wallet. So whatever wallet you got, that on-chain code might keep track of your asset in terms of how much you have and how much, whether you want to send or whether you're receiving. So those are your on-chain, your off-chain code, because off-chain, we'll have time for QA. Off-chain basically means the code is not running on the actual blockchain yet. It's not being executed on the blockchain. But your on-chain code is the actual code that's running on the blockchain. And your off-chain code with Plutus is written in Haskell, like I said earlier, one language for both off-chain and on-chain code. It runs in the user wallet, and it submits extended functionality to smart contract and add Plutus transactions to it. Your on-chain code basically is written in a subsection of Haskell, which is called the Plutus transaction. We'll look at that a little later too. It runs on the Cardano blockchain and it's compiling Plutus code. So, how many of you guys know that the whole process of a blockchain is all about transactions? It's not about, on the lower level, L1 level to call it, it's not about NFTs, it's not about DeFi, is simply about transactions. So you have a ledger and you need to track transaction. Basically, money comes from Bob and goes to Alice. That's a transaction. And if you need to change the state of the blockchain, you have to execute a transaction. You don't change the state of the blockchain any other way. So it's all about transactions. So what is the end goal of this on-chain and off-chain code? The end goal is to generate a transaction that will alter the state of the blockchain. And altering the state of the blockchain simply means that at some point, you're going to have an exchange of asset that's changing the state of the blockchain. If you have $5 in your wallet and you transfer $3 to someone else, that state has just changed. And the transaction actually records that. So what is a transaction? A Plutus transaction. It's a series of organized script and data that track asset exchange. It's also an accounting model because that transaction have to have a way of keeping track of the ledger. So your transaction script also keep track of the accounting model that the blockchain implements. It's composed of a series of scripts on the technical side that includes the validators that check if you got enough money in your wallet, if you authorize to even send that money and all of that. Redeemer, which basically represent actions a wallet might choose to take. What are some of the actions your wallet might choose to take? To send money, to receive money. Those are actions your wallet might choose to take. And then it has data, which contains information that are actually stored on the blockchain. Like the amount of money you got, or who you sent it to, all this information on the blockchain. And then for Plutus, specifically to Plutus, it has a way of extending the off-chain script. And what that means basically is you want to add additional functionality to your transaction. You want to maybe program it in a way that it does something specific for that transaction. So that's what you're looking at as far as the extension. So we're going to get a little technical here, not too detailed. I'm not going to show you guys any code, but stay with me and I'll try to make this as simple as possible, at least to the best of my ability. So one thing that makes Plutus Cardano smart contract very unique and advantageous in the entire crypto space is what you call extended UTXO. So if you're familiar with Bitcoin, Bitcoin has what you call unspent transaction output. And the underlying idea there is that accounting model basically says, if I need to spend money, I have no way of separating the money I have. So what I would do is I would spend the entire money, and then from there, I would separate how much I'm spending to one person, and then I would keep the change, but I would keep the change in a different account. So it doesn't quite work like that, but I'm trying to simplify it. So there's no way with Bitcoin for you to spend part of your money and keep the other part in the same transaction. You have to, it's an unspent transaction output, so you have to spend the entire thing, and then part of it that is sent will go to the designated receiver, and then the other part will still belong to you, but only the balance will be saved. And then of course minus your transaction fee. So that's the Bitcoin accounting model. And then you have Ethereum on the other hand that uses an account style accounting model, which is basically something like your bank, where, okay, we know how much is in your account and you can spend what you want from your account, but we're not going to spend the whole thing. We're just going to subtract what you have in your account and we're going to keep the balance there. I could go into the technical details of why those accounting models are different, but like I said, I don't want to get too technical, but just keep in mind, those are the two prevailing accounting models now. So Cardano comes along and say, hey, all of this is scripted. So why can't we extend that? We can extend that. So what it did is basically they incorporated part of Bitcoin and they incorporated part of Ethereum accounting model. And they use script to basically extend that model. So what you have is you have partially incorporated Bitcoin accounting UTXO and partially incorporated Ethereum style accounting. And then they use script to add additional capability that enhances that accounting model. So what are some of the extension? Some of the extension includes the data that basically goes along with the transaction. Gives you the ability to add more data to that. And it also gives you the ability to extend the wallet backend. Because of that accounting model, one of the benefits you have is the ability to calculate your transaction fees in your wallet before you get to the blockchain. So that if you get to the blockchain and something change, you are not charged for it. So that's one of the benefits of that account, that extended UTXO. It empowers your wallet to be able to do certain things before you even get to the chain. And another thing that is important in smart contract Plutus is endpoints. Endpoints basically enables wallet to engage with smart contracts. It also helps, it's containing Plutus contract definition. It enables off-chain functions to actually interact with smart contract, and it calls function to generate Plutus TX code. So without getting too technical, these endpoints basically are needed for the smart contract to actually execute. So you have a Plutus contract, and within that definition, you have these endpoints, which are basically, let's say you have something in your wallet. As I said before, you have your wallet, and your wallet might want to take a certain type of action. But that action cannot be done on the blockchain because the blockchain really doesn't have access to your wallet. So the actions you want to take on that blockchain can be scripted into a function, and that function can serve as an endpoint that is part of that smart contract. So when the smart contract is about to execute, it will point to that endpoint, and the function in that endpoint execute on chain. So when that function execute, basically you will have your wallet code running on the blockchain. So that's where these endpoints comes in. So what's the overview of a Plutus smart contract? Try to be faster. Overview of a Plutus smart contract. It says a Plutus smart contract should, at the very least, contain at least one endpoint. So if we know what an endpoint is, it should have at least one off-chain function to execute, if we're going by the definition of what an endpoint is. And it should have a validator. It should have a way to validate the transaction, a redeemer, which is basically deciding what the asset wallet wants to do, what kind of action it wants to take. And it should have a data script. It should have certain blockchain data being accompanied with that transaction in the smart contract. And that particular piece of smart contract should allow you to either pay to a contract or to spend to a contract. So in addition to that basic minimum of what a smart contract should contain, you can also have imports, which is, if you're software developers, it's a way of you importing different what you call libraries and SDK to help you automate your script. Have data type, functions, triggers, and event handlers, and any other auxiliary functions you need to execute. So that's what a smart contract is in a nutshell. I don't want to bore you too much with a lot of technical details when some of you maybe might not even be interested in development, but at least it gives you an idea what a smart contract is and how it pertains to Plutus in a unique way. So Plutus is not yet out. It's coming to Cardano sometimes later this year. Right now we're rolling it out, and I say we meaning Cardano and IOHK. The rollout is occurring as we speak. They just completed Alonzo Blue, and we currently should be on Alonzo White. Alonzo basically is the release that will bring Plutus to mainnet in the Cardano blockchain. And from that point, then Cardano will have the ability to create smart contracts. That means they will be able to create your DeFi, you know. That means you'll be able to create decentralized application on the Cardano blockchain, which with that brings a whole lot more utility to the chain, because right now Ethereum is kicking everybody butt because of the dApps, which is decentralized application. And what allows those decentralized protocols to run on Ethereum is the smart contract. So smart contract is almost the beating heart of a vibrant blockchain. So Alonzo, red, black, and then it goes to staging. And right now the projection is that Alonzo will be out sometimes in mainnet between mid-September, October. So you can expect decentralized application to be on Cardano at least somewhere around October. But the good thing is, remember I told you about the ability to right now test applications out. You can do that. So you have companies now that are actually writing some form of dApp for Cardano, even though it's not out yet, because they have the ability using Pluto's Playground to test the application out. So let's say you're a developer and you're interested in Cardano and you want to write smart contract. Where can you go? A good place to start is the Pluto's Pioneer program. Right now, as I said, Plutus is still in evolution. It's being rapidly put together so that we can meet the mainnet deadline. But if you want to start now, you can start with the Plutus Pioneer program. And in there, you have a way of learning the language. You have a way of executing examples. You have code you can work on. And one place to go would be GitHub if you just want to take a look at code for the developers. So I have a link to that at some point. And if you want to get more information, just trying to fully understand Plutus, there's one of my favorite is Plutus Writing Reliable Smart Contract. It's a book, costs $9. It's pretty handy. It's something if you're a developer and you just want to wrap your head around, you know, some of the technical details of it and the conceptual approach that Cardano is using. That is a good place to start. And also Haskell. If you're going to be a Plutus developer, it will be extremely helpful if you learn Haskell, because the entire Plutus ecosystem is embedded in Haskell, the programming language. And then too, you got a developer documentation and all of that if you want to go there. And if you just need to work on getting more information, there's the documentation. You can go to Cardano. Let me see if I can get to it. Yeah, I can get to it. Programming languages, and there's Plutus there, getting started. And you have your tools over here. This is Plutus Playground. Sorry, that's not up right now. I thought it was up. Apparently it's down. Not, but anyway, you can get to Plutus Playground, and you'll be able to play around with the BlockChain and mock wallet and simulation, where you have a hello world program and all of that. And I think with that, my time is just about out. And if you have more questions, I'll give about maybe five or so minutes. We can do QA and questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, you kept mentioning off-chain scripts. Is that like Bitcoin unlock scripts? Similar?
Off-chain.
What was the question?
He's talking about off-chain script and if it relates to Bitcoin. Bitcoin what?
Yeah, like Bitcoin has scripts too. So is it like Bitcoin scripts that you attach to each transaction?
It could be, but off-chain script basically are scripts that run not on the blockchain. So if it runs in a wallet, right, and at some point it gets assimilated to run on a blockchain, you can consider that off-chain script, because basically the wallet has what you call actions that it has to take, right? and those actions can only be done in the wallet. That's what makes them off-chain.
It's like UI for
Not UI. That the UI is actually part of your GUI environment. So that's not considered off-chain script because the UI is not part of your wallet. So when we're talking about off-chain script, is basically an interface that will allow things done in the wallet to also be executed on-chain.
what's an example? What would be a good example?
A good example to say, for example, I have a dataless wallet, right? I can go in my wallet and say, I want to send money, right? And I can say how much I want to send. All of that is happening in the wallet. It's not happening on the blockchain. Okay, until I hit send, right? Nothing has hit the chain yet. So when I hit send, that off-chain code that just occurred in the wallet, meaning that I have my data, what my account is, my public key is, my private key to give authorization to the wallet to send the funds, the amount I'm sending, all of that are off-chain data that are in the wallet. So when I hit send, that becomes part of the data that gets placed in the transaction that runs on-chain,
So the,
that hits the ledger.
okay, so you're not.
So basically, I think,
Data or
yeah.
like web form.
Yeah, web form, yeah, those are, the UI are not off-chain. Yes, they operate off-chain, meaning they're not part of the blockchain, but for the purpose of smart contract, those artifacts don't actually interact with the chain. So if you have data in a web form and that data never gets to the blockchain, yes, it's off-chain, but it would never be part of the smart contract. So it's not considered an off-chain code per se, because it's never going to be part of the transactions. So think of it this way: off-chain meaning that these are code that needs to run on the blockchain, but they don't live on the blockchain until the transaction actually execute. It makes sense? Or
Do you have
we can
a-
talk about it a little later.
I'm not quite with it.
We can talk about it a little later. Okay.
No, just to understand, is any library that interact with JavaScript or like Solidity, W3? I mean, do you have any library that interact with?
For Plutus? Yeah, right now there's not one. There are a few of them that's being proposed in Idea Scale, which is project proposal for Cardano, and some of them has already been funded. So you have teams that are community teams that are working on it,
Okay.
but it's
Libraries.
JavaScript library to interface with that. Yeah, but in addition, if you're a Solidity programmer right now, Cardano also got things like an EVM that will be part of the Cardano ecosystem. So if you know Solidity, you can write in there and it gets compiled to
Okay.
yeah.
So it's compatible with Solidity?
It will be. It's not compatible yet.
Okay, but it will.
It will be, yeah. But not Plutus. Plutus is a whole separate language.
Okay, but Cardano is
But the
compatible with
The
Solidity.
EVM will give you the ability to do that. Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
And another question, do you have another unit that is for enterprise cases that basically you run Ethereum and can do their own ledgers and for in enterprise, okay?
Yeah.
Is the same, Cardano will have the same concept.
Cardano have a suite of product right now. I think they call them the Atala suite of products. And you have things like Atala Prism, Atala which is digital identity. And these are decentralized application that ties back into Cardano, but they tailor more towards the enterprise side of things.
So I can
So
set
what
my
you-
own network.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is permission blockchain. That
Yes.
permission blockchain, which is you have control over that chain and everything, but it's still the Cardano blockchain, but it's basically a silo off. So you do have that ability to
Okay.
spin up a Cardano node and run your own blockchain using Cardano stuff. Yeah. Take one more question and then I think I'll sign up. Go ahead.
Hey man, it's good seeing you in person, attending your meetups online. So over the last, I guess, year or so, it's good. So, anyways, I have a real question. I have a dumb question. I'll ask the real question first.
Okay.
So, I think a lot of times when we learn smart contracts, right, we make a typical voting app. So, other voting apps we make as a little role type thing too. Wallet is more like the visualization type thing too. Everything is in, on a D app type thing.
Okay.
So in this case, if we use that hello world type of template, how would we create typical voting smart contract or voting D app using this method? Basically having a smart contract with the wallet and the blockchain. You don't obviously go into the code, just like what's the artificial blocks? What would before putting the D app, now goes to the wallet? How do we actually do that as a block type system?
One of the beauty of Cardano is that first of all, even if you have a voting app, you need some kind of asset to go with it, right? And with Cardano, once you have a dApp, a decentralized application or asset in there, Cardano has built into it, and is still working on it, where you automatically get the governance system attributed to your application. So something of that nature, you won't have to develop it. You just have to inherit it from what Cardano have and customize it to yours. They are working on that. So basically, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So that's something, that's one of the beauty of the project. They're still working on, and no other project out there have that at this time. So, yeah.
You kind of answered my dumb question already.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, the dumb question is we're actually in the filmmaker space. Most of my filmmaker friends are here, and storytellers, storytelling coaches and stuff. So, from that point of view, say we had, a lot of times, people are adding like blockchain or blockchain type plots to their existing films and stuff. Some of our friends. So say I had like a character name, just say Vladimir P. And he wanted to hack a voting system to make something like R over there, ex-president of the United States. Where would Vladimir P. hack this chain, basically, or hack the stack to basically affect the results of the election? In a theoretical
So, I understand what you're saying. So, basically, what's the weakest point for you to hack the system? Yeah, I think that's something for you to discover, because we are looking for it too. Yeah, I don't know one. Yeah, because the reason I say that is you got to understand one of the key tenets of blockchain is immutability, right? So with that immutability comes the fault tolerance or the resilience for it to be changed by one person. So if you're talking about hacking, you're talking about going in there and changing it. And that's the very nature of decentralization. So what they do is that they built in a cost. How much is it going to cost you to reorganize the block? Because that's what you're doing. You're trying to write a transaction into a block, and you're trying to go back on the blockchain, remove one of the block, and replace it with a block that you just put your fake transaction in. So how much is it going to cost you, right, to go and replace this block in all the computers, all the nodes that run this blockchain? So that's what you're looking at.
Since it's an open source wallet contract, they would just create a fork of the wallets and have it as their own wallet that's actually not as secure, but they'll hack the wallet size.
The problem is, even if you hack the wallet, you still have, you remember one of the function, the script I talked about, the validators. So you do have gatekeepers. You have a whole series of check and balance, right? If you take into consideration, for example, an asset, let's say Bitcoin, for example, the blockchain already know how many Bitcoins out there. So if you produce one counterfeit, it knows it within the matter of you producing, and it's not even going to live on Yeah. So all you're doing is just transferring asset. So there's a cost to it, and I think if you're talking about hacking the system, is how much of a cost can you pay, and is it worth paying? You know, I think some chain like Ethereum is over tens of millions of dollars just to hack it. So
Yeah, so people are recording me asking that question, so if anyone wants to know, my name is Sammy.
no.
But the vulnerability is at wallet
But-
level. Sammy, the vulnerability is at wallet level. At protocol,
Yeah, the wallet level doesn't even get to the chain until the transaction do. But anyway, we have our next speaker, so thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening. Take care.